Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mic'd Up Sports, the show that goes in depth with the people who build our sports community. If you are watching this on our YouTube or Spotify channels, we're glad you can join us. And don't forget to check out our past episodes. We have plenty of interviews, plenty of stories archived in our database. And the next story we are going to archive in our ever-growing library is Rai'Janee Meadows, who just finished her prep career in basketball at Roseville Area High School, has college plans. We'll find out where soon enough. She's still deciding on a few places, but you will see her on the basketball court again. And Rai'Janee, thanks for coming on. I know you and I had talked earlier this week, and this kind of came together quickly, but I'll start with this. Since your basketball season ended this week in sections, looking back on it, especially this past season when there was some uncertainty on whether or not there would be a season, what reflections do you have and what are your takeaways from getting one last opportunity to showcase your abilities?
Well, the takeaway that I have is you can never know what happens. We got into a pandemic thinking that it was just going to be like a few weeks, and then it turned into a year. And then we got scared that we didn't know that if we were going to get our season or not. And then me personally, getting a new coach for my senior year, it was kind of difficult. So playing in the mask and then getting a new coach and then all having to learn new things, it was a difficult time. But my team got it. We got it pretty good at adjusting to the new norm, because the new norm is wearing masks during your games, and we worked it out really good to come out.
And if you don't mind, on the subject of a coaching change, I had spoken with your teammate Tamia Ugis last summer, just after your former coach announced that he was stepping down. But the person who came in knows a thing or two about basketball and has some strong credentials in Tanisha Scott, and she brought most of her coaching staff. The only person who didn't come along got the head coaching job at Eastridge. So, Tanisha has a lot of experience, a state title at De La Salle. How did you adapt to the coaching change, and how quickly did everyone get on board?
I feel like I adapted. It took me a little while because I was so used to my old coach and his ways that I was just oh, we used to do it this way. But now I have to realize that, somebody else is coming into the program, so I have to adjust and do it their way. But I think our team got used to it pretty fast. It wasn't that hard to adjust. It's just she did a couple of things different that we weren't used to. So we had to realize that it was a new person coming into the program, and that we couldn't do anything to change her mind, or we wouldn't want to anyway. But we just had to do some things different in order to make our season good.
And I'd say your season did end up pretty good based on your standards. I know you would have loved another chance to make it to state. And with you having college plans, I think this last year maybe is a helpful indicator or a hint on what to expect, because you're going to have a new coach and a new system no matter where you go. So I would say this past season gave you a primer on what to expect. And I imagine it taught you a few things on how you can handle change that will help you when you make the transition to college ball.
Yeah, so she was saying that. She was like, we're getting you ready for college basketball. This is how it's going to be. And I was like, I understand that. I'm going to have to get used to change, because this could be my first time having a new coach in my senior year, but next year I'm going to have a whole new different coach with a whole new scenery. So I just had to get used to it. It took me a while, but I'm normally like that when I have to get used to things, because I'm not used to change. I don't like change, but I feel like it was a good change.
Well, the last 12 months, I think, have taught a lot of us about how to handle change, because we've had to get accustomed to a lifestyle none of us ever planned for. On that subject, you mentioned playing with masks. That took some time to get used to, but ultimately it wasn't a barrier. I know there was some difficulty keeping it covered properly, and that's not out of opposition or rebelliousness to these masks. You just realize how hard it is when everyone's going full throttle. It's
Yeah.
hard to keep that equipment on. What was your experience playing with the masks this season?
It was hard. Like we got a few new masks. Like we had a new change. Like our coach Tanisha, her mom made a mask, and it was so cute. It had like a little logo on it, but it was cloth, and it was one game, and I remember it so vaguely. Like it just kept going in my mouth, like as I was trying to breathe in, so I just couldn't play. I missed like three layups in a row, and I was just like, yeah, I gotta go back to the other mask. So I had to go get a new mask, but like sometimes I'll find myself like pulling it off my mouth and turning around to like breathe a little bit, and then I'll put it back on. It was really hard, like coming off of a year of no basketball, no running, no nothing, being in the house, to going full throttle and having something covering your mouth where you couldn't really breathe. So that took a long time to get used to it. I'm probably still not used to it because it's so hard, and I breathe so heavily and I get so hot so fast. So it was just very hard to like get used to.
Well, hopefully we can play a little more normal next season. I know you'll be playing at the college level by that point, but I'm hopeful that as we continue to vaccinate the population, that won't be a thing for players. And we saw there wasn't any issues with compliance because I think most players like yourself wanted another chance to play. You knew what the risks involved were. And if that meant having to wear a mask, then hey, that's what you're going to do.
Right.
And I just want to be clear for anyone out there. I know some try to make a big deal out of masks, but yeah, I didn't see any teams call off games because of that. Unfortunately, some teams had to end their seasons prematurely due to positive tests. And we're seeing that in all levels of sport. I know you and I imagine everyone else did what you could to ensure you could play games and prevent potential exposure to the coronavirus. But knowing that you were playing a season where theoretically any game could have been your last, how did that adjust your approach? And how do you think that maybe gave you a greater appreciation for the sport?
It did give me a big appreciation because like people know that like we didn't none of us got the corona, so our season did go all the way through, but I know a lot of people whose seasons did get cut short or they had to stop mid-season. So I know they were like really sad, and I was just like, yeah, I wouldn't want that to go on anybody. So we just all played our game like it was our last. Like I know all my teammates put it out all on the floor all the time, and we just went hard. And we started off really like slow, but we picked it up really fast going on a streak. And I know all my teammates are so grateful to be able to play.
Well, I do want to express my gratitude that none of you got sick. I know a few players from high school teams who did get the coronavirus and one from college. And fortunately, she recovered and was able to resume playing for her collegiate team. But this is no joke. And I know I can't wait to get back out there. As much as I hated missing out on covering athletes like yourself and so many others, it's like, hey, my priority is to protect the people I care about. And if that means I got to lay low for a while, I'm happy to do that. Because the way I see it, as I was telling you beforehand, I can always come back to cover more games, but not if I create a situation where I get myself or others sick and it leads to long-term problems. So taking a short-term hit, hopefully for a long-term gain.
Right.
So we've been talking about this season, and we'll circle back to that, but I'm curious, Rai'Janee, what was the starting point, the first moment of memory that got you hooked on the sport of basketball?
So I started playing basketball when I was maybe in like fourth grade, I think, fourth, fifth, one of those. And I played for the Salvation Army. I had just started getting into it. I went to like not the summer day camp, the after school program, and they saw me and they were like, you'd probably be really good at basketball. And I was like, whoa, I've never really thought of basketball. And so I tried it out and it was like really fun. Like you got like a sisterhood, you got like a nice workout in, you got like all these people who cared about you and everything. And me, like my mom didn't really like wasn't really big on my sports back then, and like so I had to get a lot of help from like my coaches and my sisters moms and all of those. Like we all got really close. We did sleepovers and everything, and it was just so fun. And I was like, this would be like something to do like when you're older. Like this is really fun, you get paid to do what you love. So I was just like, well, this will be good for me. And I like basketball and it was like really fun to do, and I was really good at it.
And here you are all these years later, still hooping it up.
Yeah.
Who were the role models, the people you looked up to in the sport of basketball?
My role models were probably my coaches. Like they always pushed me, like Preston Parker and William Baker, like all those coaches that I had when I was little. They always pushed me. They always knew how good I was. Like my best friend's mom, she always helped me out, gave me rides and everything. They just always pushed me, and I seen how hardworking they were, and I was like, yeah, like they care about me a lot, and I want to do this for them.
Something else we were discussing, and if you don't mind sharing this experience, but I'll leave that up to you. You know, you stand at 5'10", as I understand it, and oftentimes when I talk to athletes, especially when they're 6 foot or above, it's often hard to find clothes or shoes that will fit. Now I know you're not quite 6 feet, but I caught a conversation where you were discussing some of the trials and tribulations that come with being a taller, bigger female in terms of frame. What has your experience been like growing up being one of the taller figures out there?
My experience is like you can't always like with clothes and everything like you were saying, you can't always find your size, and like you're always gonna have like clothes coming up short. You can't really always put them in the dryer because they'll dry, and so you have to like I just stay away from pants sometimes, or like I'll like put my socks above my pants if I'm really caring. If not, I'll just wear them. But most of the time I'll stay with sweats because they're comfortable. Like most basketball players like sweats. They're just something that you could just fly right on, and like you could mix them with anything. They're just really comfortable.
And as you were growing, making your way through the traveling teams, ultimately at Roseville, when did you sense that you had a knack of feeling that basketball was the sport that would take you places?
I had an act like I knew that like this would be like my sport when I was back at Humboldt. Like a lot of people were coming up to me, "Oh, you're so good," and I was like, "Oh, well, I didn't really know that I was that good." Like people came up to me and were like, "You should really think about doing this like for a living," and I was like, "You're probably right. Like this is something that I love, and like it's really fun to do, and like it's the competitiveness in the sport is just really fun to like go out there and try to like beat someone in basketball. It's just like it gives you like a thrill to like go out there and just play a sport that you love really hard and give it all that you got and then come out on top in the end."
So you originally enrolled at Humboldt before going to Roseville?
Yes, I went to Humboldt for 6th through 8th grade.
And what led you to change to Roseville, if you don't mind me asking?
So I mentioned my coaches earlier, Preston Parker and my best friend's mom, Marnie Lofgren. They all they wanted me and my like other two best friends to like stay playing together since we were little. So they were like, you guys should all go to Roseville and you guys should all play together, and they'll be like, just like you're little, you'll be playing together and you'll have so much fun. And I was like, that sounds like a really good point. And I was like, I've like seen Roseville play and they're like so good. So I was like, I would love to play a sport with my best friends and play on a good team that I know good is good. And then the year that I transferred, we made it to state.
That's right. You reached the semifinal round, knocking off Cretin-Durham Hall in the quarters that year. What would you say were the differences, similarities as far as culture, environment, going from an inner city program in Humboldt, where they've had some success in women's basketball, Lachey Holt, the all-time leading scorer, and then would do the same at St. Catherine. Uh, they'd won a conference title many years ago, but Humboldt maybe not on par with Roseville as far as athleticism, and that's not a knock on the athletes. It's just a noting where the two schools are. But for you, what was the difference? What was that experience like going from Humboldt and then going to Roseville, which has that mixture of inner city and suburban vibes, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was very different. I was at Humboldt just doing my thing, and then like going to Roseville, I went over there and they were saying words I didn't even know. I was like, whoa, we did not hear this back at Humboldt. I was like, this is a very different program, very different athletes, like more higher up, I would say. Not to knock on the athletes, like you said, but it was more difficult. Like I was over there like scoring like 30. I came over here, I was like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm not scoring that much as I was. So it was a very different change and like very different athletes.
What were some of the vocabulary terms that caught you by surprise?
It's kind of embarrassing, but like he said, like I can't remember the exact term, but it was like the one for like the corner, the top of the key in the corner. He said a specific term, and I was like, what is that? And so he just pointed out to me. I felt like so dumb at the time. And then I was just like, yeah, let me just go to the spot and I'll just be quiet.
If it makes you feel any better, Rai'Janee, I'm not exactly sure what term that is either. Usually I would say like corner three or in the corner, because that's what I'm used to, wing, top of the key, all of that. I will say this though, Rai'Janee, it might seem embarrassing for you when you don't understand those terms, but you realize, especially as you get older, that happens a lot. You're going to just encounter terms and words and dogs and guests there and guests who will drop in unexpectedly. But sometimes when I speak with athletes at the high school, college, and pro levels, I find myself having to look up terms on Urban Dictionary just because I'm hearing it being used and I don't know what it means. And I'm trying to find out what it means. And so you might find this amusing. Recently, I discovered the slang term for bet, which for me growing up, I always associated that with making a wager, something along those lines, whether it's betting on a sporting event, casino, etc., until I realized, oh, bet has this alternate meaning that, like, okay.
Right.
So words that might seem second nature to you, but for me, I'm going, wait, when did bet become a slang term now?
Yeah.
That's a bit.
So my point is we're always learning and we're always growing, and I'm sure that may happen again in college ball, but I think you'll be all right. And it's like, once you're smart enough to realize that you don't know everything, I think that makes it easier. So don't feel like you have to know everything, because hopefully you will have people who will help you learn along the way.
Right. Yes. They definitely helped me learn a lot of things over at Roseville.
On a related note, not too many people that I know have an apostrophe in their name, and I think that's your case. So how did your name come about? Do you know the history behind it? And how did that apostrophe get in there? And I ask because I don't know too many folks out there that share your name, and I think it's kind of cool. It's fun to hear some of these stories that go into it.
Yeah. So I actually have like an apostrophe and an accent over my E, but I don't really like put that in my name. But I don't know the backstory of it. I just know my godmom named me. And I actually have a funny story. So my sister, she's only 2 weeks older than me. Like her birthday is December 2nd. Mine is December 19th. So we're both 18. And her name is Rai'Janee and mine is Rai'Janee. So every time I tell someone that story, they're just like, whoa, you guys have similar names.
At Roseville, you said you made it to state your freshman year, and although you weren't able to make a return trip, What was that experience like for you? You came over from Humboldt where you were scoring 30. You go to Roseville, you're not scoring 30 on a regular basis, but you had the chance to prove yourself in the state tournaments and go on this wild ride. And you were able to continue a high level of excellence beyond that. But what do you remember from that season?
From that season, I wasn't like fully on varsity. I just know that we got to stay and I was just so excited. I got in for a couple of minutes. Like I got in like at the end, you know how like coaches do you when you're on JV and you're like ready to get in. So I got in a few minutes later in like some games and I was just like, whoa, this feels so different to be like on the state floor, all these lights, all these fans like watching you. It was just a really big, nice experience to get to experience. So I was like, oh, I want to do this again, but I want to do it where I can actually play the full game, going full throttle and everything.
How would you say you improved as an athlete as you got more playing time and more experience playing for Roseville through your two different coaches and through all of the bumps that have come along the way, especially this past season?
It was a lot different. I think I've grown a lot as a player. I hear from my coaches a lot, and I see that all the progress that I've made. I've gotten really good at defense and on stealing the ball and everything. So I think coming from Humboldt to where I kind of got it easy over there, coming here and having to work harder for it, it definitely made me better as a player.
And you weren't the only St. Paul product to go to Roseville. Tamia Ugis, who will be playing at LSU, started at Highland Park and then, like yourself, made the move to Roseville. The two of you seniors this year. What would you make of your camaraderie as teammates, and how excited are you to see her continue her journey as a Division I athlete?
I'm so excited for Tamia, like the way she got into LSU. That is a big deal. Like that's a big deal for someone. And I just see how she's so excited to play. I seen that our last game, she was so sad that she couldn't play because of her knee injury. And she was like, it's so sad for me not to be able to play with you guys again. It was my senior year and I just wanted to play one last game with you because if we would have won, she probably would have got to play in like the next game. So she was sad about that and all of us were sad for her because we wanted her to play again. Like it's your senior year, you should be able to end it on a high note.
Now, in the case of Tamia, she had placed her verbal and then signed her NLI to go to LSU. Did that last year. You are still deciding on some schools. So, what has the process been like for you? And if you don't mind, what are you still considering? What has led you to not commit to a school yet?
Um, I'm still going to like visit schools. I'm supposed to be going to visit a school later on in the week when my mother gets back from vacation. Like I'm waiting to see like what school best fits me. I haven't been to that many schools, so I don't want to like make the wrong choice. I just want to make sure I'm like really sure on what school I'm going to start going to.
How many offers have you fielded? And I'm not smart enough to weasel out like your first choice or like where you're thinking, but what are the factors? What are you considering that will play into your decision to find a college?
I'm not really like considering a lot of things. I just want to make sure like that I'm going to a good school where I know that I'm going to get better at basketball and I know I'm going to excel in my academics. I just want to make sure that is those two are a factor, my academics and my getting better at basketball.
And what have you learned from your experience for other athletes, what next year or down the road, who might be experiencing what you are? A lot of athletes make their decisions early or in the fall. Some, like yourself, will wait a little longer to see how things play out. And as we've seen, it's not a race. You don't have to make an announcement that first day that you're able to. But what would you tell someone else who is holding out or waiting for that right opportunity?
I would say I was looking at like people who were like committing early, and I was like, oh, should I be committing right now? Should I be getting to colleges, talking to them, committing, and telling them that I'm going to go to their school? But then I realized like not everybody can like just know where they're going, and like some people do have to take their time. And I got started at my recruitment process really late, so that's also another factor on why I'm still waiting. So I would just say like take your time and don't rush into it. Don't look at other people committing and then say that you have to do it. Like just wait until you can really say that you want to go to this school.
And you mentioned starting the process late. So when were you thinking about continuing to play basketball in college?
I've always just thought about it, but me like not having someone in my life who's all about basketball. Like I was probably the only one in my family who was like even interested in basketball. Like my mom rarely comes to games, so like I don't really get that much like support or whatever. So I just didn't know like where to start or how to start or what connections I had to have. Like I had to go through coaches like my AAU coach to have them help me through my recruitment process because I didn't really know what I was doing.
Well, Rai'Janee, sometimes I still don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So, who would you consider, who are the people that have supported you throughout your time as an athlete, where maybe you don't have the traditional support network at times, but from what you're telling me, based on your friendship with Tamia, for example, there's no lack of support for you as an athlete, as a basketball player. And so, who are the people that have stood behind you throughout your time as an athlete?
I'd say my best friend's mom, Marnie Lofgren, she's always been there for me. She's came to like a lot of games. She just couldn't come this season because of COVID and everything. And then my other best friend's dad, Preston Parker, he was also my coach and everything. They were there for my whole basketball career. They've always supported me and came to my games and always told me like what I could do and how I could be greater. And I've just been with them through my whole basketball career.
How difficult was it, since you noted not everyone could be with you due to attendance restrictions? What was it like playing in front of small crowds, sometimes empty crowds? Certainly not what you're accustomed to in a regular season game or in a normal year where you have all of your routines, the concession stands and everything, all of the minutia that goes along with a basketball game. This year, of course, everything seemed abnormal. How strange was that? And how long did it take for you to get used to it?
Well, it wasn't really that strange for me because no, like I like never really had anybody in the crowds to go like, oh, they're up there to go look at them. But like I know like we do have like bigger crowds normally, like the other people's parents and like family members come out, and like it was we were shocked because we didn't think that we would actually have that like many people. So we were like, oh, we have a big crowd than normally. So we were actually happy for all the people that came and supported us because they could, and it was a risk for everybody if you could come out there. So we're happy if you wanted to support us and everything.
Overall, how vital was that support for you? Coming in from Humboldt and then making the move to Roseville, so you have to, in some ways, start over as far as finding your place in the community, figuring out who you are, all of that. Because something I want my audience to pick up on, based on what you're telling me, even though you might have been a latecomer to the recruiting experience and maybe the basketball experience, maybe you're not on a first name basis like Paige Beckers and Adalia McKenzie, but it sounds like you have gained a lot by sticking with basketball. How vital has that support network you spoke of and just your own ambition to get better? How vital has that been for you?
It's been vital. Like, so me knowing like I'm not as big as Adalia and Paige, like I know that like, well, they're really good. Like I look at them and I'm like, wow, I want to be that big someday. Like they've outgrown like a lot of things, and I look at them and I'm just like, I'm so happy for people like that who can come out and just everybody's looking for them and everybody knows your name. And I'm just like, well, I want to get like right there one day. So that's what I've been working towards. Like, that's what I put my mind to every day I step on the court. Like, I want to be big.
And what are some advice or tips that you've received from your coaches, whether it was your former staff or the current staff led by Tanisha Scott? What are some pointers that they passed along to you that you have found helpful?
The main pointer that I've got like overall is to be consistent, because I'm not as consistent as I want to be like with my games. Like some games I'm a good shooter, some games I'm not, some games I'm getting a lot of steals, sometimes some games I'm just not getting any at all. So those are the games that I want to be more consistent on.
And looking back at your time as a Roseville athlete, you've experienced a lot. And I think you could say that no matter what school you play for, because sports is unpredictable like that. Whether it's injuries, big games, rough games, you just never know until you play them. That's why we are attracted to these sports. But what will you remember most fondly about your time at Roseville?
I remember like all the times that we always like came up on top, and we've always like gone, like one of our traditions is to go to Perkins after like big games. We'd all just sit there and we'd all just have a good time and celebrate the win, and we'd all just come together as a team and see how we're doing and like reflect on our season. We didn't get to do that this season because of COVID, of course, but that's our main thing that we do. We just go out to eat at Perkins and see how everybody's doing and everything.
What were some other sports that you took up, if any? I know basketball is your primary sport, but I asked because I see that powder puff shirt you've got on. So I'm wondering what other sports did you take up throughout your time as a high school athlete?
So I took up softball, which I really loved. I wish I could have played that again. But then I took up track, which I didn't really like that much. But people were like, "Oh, you should do it again. You should do it again." I signed up for it last year, but COVID happened, and so I was like, I don't really want to like do track again because I wasn't really interested in it. Like I didn't really like track, and then like football. We didn't really have a football team, but if we had a football team, I'd probably play football. I love football so much. Like my team won the power puff, so I was like, I was the wide receiver, and I caught like all the passes. I'm really good at football. I love football. I wish that we had a girls football team at Roseville.
So football is your favorite sport?
Basketball is my favorite sport, but I love football. It's really fun.
Well, if you ever get that itch to play football at some point, I do know a women's league and there's a women's team around here that wouldn't mind adding you to their roster. So something to keep in mind.
Okay.
And I guess if you wanted to try softball again, you still could, but that's up to you, of course, since I would think we'll have a spring season of some kind.
Yeah, they're having a season, I'm pretty sure.
What position did you play in softball?
I played center field. I picked it up really fast, and it was kind of easy for me. And it took me a while to get used to the hits because I wasn't really getting that many hits. But in the field, I was good at catching the outfield balls.
I guess that doesn't surprise me because you have to have good hands in basketball to catch and receive passes. Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble. Now, softball is a little different. The ball is a little bit smaller in diameter, but I'm like, yeah, I could see how you would be a good fielder for that reason.
Yeah. And I ran the bases pretty fast. That's another reason they're like, you're really fast to come play softball. I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it. And I ended up loving it.
Are you the fastest player in your team at Roseville?
No, there's Sarah Grossi. When we run the mile, she like passes me like 5 times. And I'm like, you just passed me like a second ago. How fast are you? She's so fast. I'm not the fastest. There's there's more people faster than me.
It reminded me of the scene from the MCU and Captain America, the on your left. It sounds like that's what Grossi is. You run your mile, and then here she comes around again. It's almost like on your left, just repetitive on repeat.
Yeah. She's like every second I hear some little footsteps coming up behind me. I'm like, that's Sarah. I'm gonna get past again.
At least in basketball, that's less of an issue. You don't have to worry about getting past so much, right?
Right, just running back and forth, not around.
If you don't mind, what are some other interests of yours outside of sports that you see yourself taking up, whether it's in college or when you enter the professional ranks? What are some other things that you like to do?
So I like to I'd say like I have a like backup plans if that's what you're talking about. Like you mentioned one time a flight attendant. I would love to like travel the world, and people are like, well, a flight attendant is a good position that you could do to travel the world. So I was looking at that, and then like maybe like a counselor. I just like being in people's business, and I feel like it would be fun to like be in someone's business and tell them like, oh, well, I think you should do this, and so that would be really fun. So one of those two.
Well, Rai'Janee, I have to give you props for finding a productive outlet to get into people's businesses, because like for me, I try to avoid that because I'm not into gossip. I don't want to spread rumors. But as a counselor, therapist, you might be trained for that, and then it's all right. Like, okay, here's the situation. But that's kind of funny that you're considering that path just because you like to hear what's going on.
Yeah, it's just like I like being in people's like minds. Like I've like seen like movies and seen like what therapists can do. Like they really help people a lot. That just being in people's business is just like a plus of it. But like helping people out is like mainly what's like important in the field. So I was like, that would be like a fun thing to do. Plus you get to be a businesswoman. Just have your own office and like sit down and actually be a businesswoman.
Well, when you brought up your aspirations of being a flight attendant, I noticed that was something consistent you had listed in the breakdown guidebook that I purchase every year. No matter what, you'd say the most unusual thing about yourself is that you want to be a flight attendant. So, what fascinates you about that profession? Because some athletes will change up their answers. You have said, like, I would love to be a flight attendant someday. What led you to that interest?
I just love I just want to go see the world, and as a flight attendant, you can do that. Like they like that's what you do. You fly around the world, and I just really want to go see the world when I'm older.
And going off my last question, what would you say is the most unusual thing about yourself that people wouldn't necessarily know about you when they met you for the first time?
I'd say maybe like my goofiness. I'm just like very goofy. Like every team that I've always joined, like I'm probably the most goofiest one. Like this year with a newcomer on a team, Michaela Holton. We've like always joked around and said like I'm funnier or she's funnier. We just always been like the team clowns.
So who would you say is the funnier of the two?
Me, of course. She's agreed, but sometimes she has days, but it's me. To me is the third. To me is funny, but she's the third.
I'll take your word on that only because I'm not there all the time. And when I've covered Roseville games, either in volleyball or basketball, and I had the chance to catch up with Tamia, she doesn't really show that goofball side of herself. I'm sure it's there, but no, she's always been courteous, respectful with me, and we always connect, say hello, and I'm excited to see what she can do. You saw she got an article this past year on Sports Engine's Girls Basketball Hub, and I don't think there's anyone out there who isn't rooting for her when you think about her talents as an athlete, her story, what she has done to get to this point. So I'd say you've got a pretty good triumvirate of comedians.
Yeah, I love Tamia so much. She's really goofy, but like you always take Tamia serious. Like she's just that person who you can't like really like. Sometimes you can't take her serious at all because like she's so big and funny, and you're like, You're just so funny. I can't really take you serious, but she's funny and she's serious at the same time.
So Rai'Janee, throughout your time as a basketball athlete or any sport, throughout your life in sports to this point, what has been the most exciting moment and the most embarrassing moment?
I'd say the most exciting moment was definitely going to state and seeing how that worked. Of course, that was just a really good and big like experience for me. The funniest moments. I'm sorry, I gotta think. There's been a lot of them. Probably like there's this one time on the bus where a player had like this like cheddar broccoli soup and it spilled in her bag, and everybody was like looking around the bus and it was just like this really bad smell, and everybody tracked it back to her because it was her cheddar broccoli soup that spilled in her bag, and she was just so mad, and it was just so hilarious.
What was that smell like?
It was really bad. Like I feel like it's been in her bag for like a week, but it had just spilled, I think, and it was just like it stunk up the whole bus, and so she had to like wash her bag like 4 times.
Meanwhile, the rest of you are probably cracking open the windows trying to aerate the bus so that you don't have to put up with the smell of soup.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think that soup would smell like that, but it smelled so bad.
Well, I do find it amusing that the silliest moment wasn't something that necessarily happened to you. So maybe that speaks to your talents as a player to avoid doing something like scoring on the wrong basket.
Oh yeah, I haven't done that, but I've seen a player just do that. Oh, I have an embarrassing moment. Like it started off like maybe last year, like airballing free throws. That is so embarrassing. I tend to do that sometimes when I get nervous. I just think about like how many people are looking at me at a free throw, so I just start shaking and then I airball it. It's really embarrassing.
A few players have done that, whether it's at the free throw line or they talk about hitting the backboard or just missing a shot so badly that they're going, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Looking forward, what are some things you're excited about? What majors are you considering? Because no matter where you go, you hopefully will get the chance to play college basketball. So, what are you excited about with the road that lies ahead?
I'm excited to pick my school and then pick my major. I'm probably picking psychology so I can do the going into the field of a counselor. So I'll be picking psychology.
And something that you and I imagine many other athletes around the metro have dealt with. Not only have we been dealing with a pandemic in this last year, but moments like George Floyd's death rippled throughout the community. And so players, including your teammates, they've all had something to say about it. These are conversations that will likely continue long after the Derek Chauvin trial and other hot button moments when it comes to civil rights. What would you make of everything that has transpired in this last year, whether it was your own teammates saying something about it, going to protests or organizing rallies, the WNBA dedicating last season to people like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor? These are conversations that aren't going anywhere. And this is something that you and I will have to grapple with, I imagine, for a long time.
Yeah, I would say like I wish I could have been a part like of the protests and everything. Like my mom didn't want me going out there because of like all the craziness that was happening, but I wanted to go out to the protests and do my support because what's going on is like really sad. And like when that happened, I was just like in bed for like days because like I'm like, how could something so bad happen to a man who's just trying to get back home to his kid? And I'm just like, I don't really like what's going on in the world. I'd rather like stay away from all that. But I really wanted to go to the protest and I really want to like show my support and everything because as a fellow Black person, it's really hard to see all these Black people being wrongfully done.
How would you say the role of an athlete has changed or evolved in that time? Because, like you said, you wanted to go out to the protest, but you also were mindful of your safety. But I know Tamia is highly outspoken about it on her social media channels. I know a few players who went to protests, and the WNBA had Breonna Taylor's name on the back of their jerseys last season, and they're continuing that discussion this year and beyond. There was a time when athletes would be reluctant to get into current events the way they are now, but you would be, I imagine you will be a part of this movement if we have another situation or another incident like George Floyd last year. As you noted, these aren't things that happen in a vacuum. These are things that really get to you, that really strike a chord and just make you feel anxious, for lack of a better word. How do you think the role of athletes, not only in sports, but in activism, how has that evolved, and how do you see yourself contributing to that discourse?
I see myself having a bigger voice, that I'm an athlete, like I'm out there already doing something like in the world. So I see like you could have a bigger voice if you should have a bigger voice if you're an athlete. Like you have more people on your platform and more people in your corner, so you could like speak your mind, and like they'll hear you, and they'll, maybe the people who like aren't as big as like going to protest and everything, they'll hear you and be like, yeah, I want to go support.
And looking back throughout your journey, what has sports done for you? Basketball has taken you a few places, and it sounds like it will take you to college, whether that's D3, JUCO, or wherever you end up. And there could be more than one stop on that path. I know, as I said before the broadcast, Olivia Antilla comes to mind. Several athletes at the D1 level will change schools, and then some will start one area and then finish someplace else. So there is no one right way to do this, but what do you think sports has done for you that without it, you wouldn't get to experience?
I think sports have made me like a better person. Like I've noticed that I'm more likely to go to a gym than go like out and have like a party or something. It's kept me like more like indoors and more like ready to go play a basketball game than other students. I think that it's kept me more like safe, like cautious around my grades and everything, to keep them up and everything so I can continue playing. I think it's just like made me like have better like respect, and I have like more respect for a lot of people, and I want to like instead of going out and party like a lot of teenagers, I rather like go in a gym.
That's an interesting take, Rai'Janee. And you also spoke of being the first member of your family to take up basketball and to really make sports a part of your identity. You've talked about the people who have supported you along the way. Were there any moments or times where people came up to you and said, "You inspire me"?
Um, I haven't really got a lot of those, but like when we do like the Little Hoopers camp, I know a lot of them like they come up to you and they want like your autograph and everything, and that really excites me. Like, oh, little kids want my autograph. Maybe that they'll want like more of it, and they'll see me on the big screen one day.
How surreal was that, that kids in these Little Hoopers camps and other activities you do, how surreal was it when people are asking you for an autograph?
I was like, really, I was like, you want my autograph? Just little me. So I was really surprised, and it was like really fun to just sign their little papers and their shirts, and to see how excited they were to come to basketball and see that they want to do this when they're older, just like me.
And I think it also emphasizes how much you might mean to someone when they're little. maybe you don't become the superstar athlete down the road, but one of those kids might remember who you are a few years later when they're playing high school ball, or if they happen to run into you in public or elsewhere. And I think it goes to show that you just never know who's watching. So whether or not you're the star player, you could be making a positive difference for somebody.
Yeah, I think that like if a little kid was to see me on the street, that they like appreciate me.
Rai'Janee, this podcast might set a record for the highest number of cameo appearances.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hey, it's fine. This is Zoom, and this isn't something that any of us were prepared for a year ago. So I've just learned to sometimes bow to the absurd, but I wonder, they see this and they're like, here, how do I get on camera? Oh, I know.
Just walk out the house.
Just walk out the door, walk through the door. Yes. Well, you better be careful the next time you do one of these if anyone tries to photobomb you.
Yeah, they just pop out their head out the door.
So when kids are coming up to you asking for autographs, when you hear stories, when you see the joy that comes to their faces when you get a chance to play a small part in their lives, and you see the impact that being a student athlete can have in the community, how do you think that has helped you grow as a leader?
I think it's helped me grow because like knowing that little kids are looking up to me is really like, oh, I want to do better to show little kids what they're capable of and what they can do, and they could really make it to the big screens and everything. They could be me one day signing little kids autographs and everything. So I really like I put myself out there to like go help little kids so they can do what I'm doing later on.
And on top of that, even though you moved elsewhere, you did start at Humboldt, and a lot of folks like to give flack to inner city kids, inner city programs, things of that nature. I know Como Park has dealt with some of that a little bit with stereotypes and whatnot. We would need a whole nother conversation to get into all of that. But I can point to you. I can point to Lachey Holt, who made something out of seemingly nothing, or Tamia, who started at Highland, finished at Roseville, and all the other athletes who found a way to make it work from the inner city. You have a chance to add your name to that list, and it's far more nuanced than I think mainstream media would lead you to believe. But knowing that, hey, you are proof that you can make something no matter where you come from, what does that mean for you?
It means a lot to me because me coming from Humboldt and not really knowing a lot about basketball, and then going to Roseville to coming to like a lot of different things, it's just like very different. And I'm happy that I got to experience different things. And I've got to be coached by Lachey Holt, and she's so amazing. I really love her. And playing with Tamia, it's like really shows you like where people can come from and how big they can be.
I know Lachey is really taken up coaching seriously, whether it's younger athletes or her younger siblings. That's something she has invested a lot of time into now that her playing days are done. And your story, I don't know where it will end as far as basketball and your other ventures, but here you are, not having the lineage, so to speak, which is fine because every saga has a beginning. But I have a lot of athletes who come on and say, oh, I picked up the sport through my parents, or I watched a lot of NBA or WNBA, or my siblings are doing it, my friends are doing it. Here you are. Obviously, the passion was there, but you've had to forge some links and connections on your own. You've had to build your network in ways that not every athlete does. So for anyone who might be in your situation where maybe they are the first in their family to take up basketball or other sports, and they have to work a little bit harder to get in touch with the people who will help them become smarter players and citizens, what advice would you offer them?
I just say like if you're starting off from like nothing and you realize that you want to do it, I just say try it, and if you love it, then keep doing it. Because I didn't think that I was gonna love basketball as much as I do, but I really do love it. And I started off from nothing and no support to a lot of support, and being in Roseville basketball, which is a big, excited thing to do.
Is there anything else about your story, Rai'Janee, that you haven't touched on that, or we haven't touched on that you would like to add?
Um, no, not really. We touched it all.
Up to this point, at least, and I've got a feeling there's more on the way. But what are you going to miss most about Roseville now that your time at basketball is done? Maybe you take up softball or track again, who knows? But now that you know your high school career in basketball is over, what are you going to miss most about it?
I'm gonna definitely miss the people who I've made a connection with on my team. I'm like, if I go away like to wherever, I know I'm not gonna see them as much, but if I stay in Minnesota, I'm definitely gonna go to their games and everything because I love those girls so much. They made a different, like they made me who I am somewhat, and I know that they made me be a better player playing with them, and I love them a lot.
And on that note, whether it was at Roseville or in AAU ball, because I understand you played for UVA this past summer, or you can go back earlier. I wouldn't ask you who your favorite teammate is because you played with so many that I think it would be tough to name just one. But what are some moments or memories that symbolize the friendships you have built with your teammates, whether it was Tamia at Roseville or in the AAU circuit where you get to mix it up with athletes you would never get to play alongside with without it?
When I first started AAU, I didn't even know what AAU was. I came from Humboldt not knowing what AAU was until I came to Roseville. And Jada Hood introduced me to AAU, and she introduced me to Peter Long to play with the Suns. And that was my first time hearing about AAU, playing AAU or anything. So that was fun. And I just like the people who I play with in AAU, I've never like seen before or anything. And I was like, this is very new to me. And I'm happy that I got that experience also because that helped my career too.
And on the flip side, are there any moments you can recall where your presence inspired others on AAU or high school teams?
Maybe there's this game where I played for this team and we were down one and they called on me to like make the winning shot and I made it and we were all just jumping around the court because it was a big play. Like they drew up a play and I did it perfectly and then we won the game. And I took a picture with the scoreboard, of course, holding up the little one that I made. So I feel like people were looking at that game, especially for me, because that's when people realize that like they can come to me for like the last game winning point.
So you've got a buzzer beater on the resume.
Yeah, I got a couple.
Okay, a couple. So, well, those are always nice to have. I think, that's the dream for any athlete is to be the one to take that last shot and come out with the win. It doesn't always work out that way, as you know, with
Yeah.
the sport of basketball. Sometimes you run into a cold stretch, or sometimes you can drop the right play, it just doesn't go in. But that's real cool. You've got a couple of buzzer beaters, and uh, you've really touched on a lot for someone that, as you said, started with nothing. You had to build these connections on your own, but what you've done so far to me is proof that it can be done and that it doesn't matter where you start as long as you're able to invest the time and energy and positivity as well, because I think making sports work requires resilience of that nature to get to those hard moments. But I'd like to think you're proof that you don't have to start with anything in order to get something out of it.
Yes, definitely. I feel like starting with nothing definitely makes you a hard player and like want to do it, to make more of it, to get more out of it.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to finding out when you will decide on a college. I imagine a few others are waiting for that moment too. So obviously, I can't rush you. This is a process that you have to go through, that you have to decide at your own pace. But as I told you, the one thing that I hated most was missing out and getting a chance to continue sharing stories like yours. I'm glad we've been able to do that in podcast form, but hopefully I'll get the chance to do it again in a game next season, because the hardest part was not being able to see you and so many other athletes that I've gotten to know over the years. And I can't wait to get back out there.
Yes, I can't wait for you to get back out there. It was a really exciting season this year, especially being different.
But hey, there's still a state tournament. I know you'll have to be a spectator, but here's to hoping we get to play it out. And no matter what, your story isn't finished just yet. So I imagine it was hard knowing earlier this week you played your last game, but I also imagine it was tempered by the fact that no matter what, I see myself continuing to play basketball.
Yes, definitely. Going into our last game, not knowing that it was our last game, but I had like to come out at the end and was like, well, this isn't my last game completely. It's just my last game as a Roseville Raider, and I will continue to be great wherever I take my basketball career.
I have no doubt about that. And I know you're going to have a lot of support. I'm good friends with Tanisha, and something that sticks with her no matter what school she coaches, the support she has for the athletes that have touched her in a significant way, whether it was at South or De La Salle, now at Roseville. She almost always has something nice to say about the athletes that she coaches. And I know they'll be cheering you on, and everyone else who comes to your games will do the same.
Yes, definitely. And I love Tanisha.
It's kind of hard to not like Tanisha.
Yeah, she has a personality that definitely fit into the team.
Yeah, my only gripe with her is that I'm still waiting to get her on the podcast, but one day that will happen. We've been going back and forth on it for a couple of years, and I know she has a daughter of her own, and she's got priorities. So I say that jokingly because, realistically, I think we can give her a pass. But that's the beauty of this podcast, is that there is no time limit and there is no wrong answer. And I really enjoyed some of the answers you've had to offer and some of the hopes and dreams you aim to pass on to others.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for sharing a part of your story, Rai'Janee. And whenever you start your college career, perhaps we'll have to do this again.
Yes, definitely. I'll let you know when I make a decision.
Well, I'll be waiting. And as we said, a few others will be too. So I wish you the best of luck as you continue that process. And hopefully, like you said, I can get back out there soon so I can see you, whether it's at a D3 you spoke of, or at the JUCO level, or who knows, maybe Division I. You never know.
All right, you never know.
Well, Rai'Janee Meadows of Roseville Area High School. We'll find out when she decides on a college, and I can only presume it will be an exciting moment for her and everyone else when that time comes. Until then, if you want to be a guest on a future episode of this podcast, just contact us at social media at @TheMikePeden on Twitter or Instagram. All you need is a good story, and we'd be happy to share it. So until next time, thanks for watching.